we have is transportation, and we had asked Karen to provide us with the cost of a bus. Was that correct? It was, we were asking for the cost of.
Yeah, I specifically asked for the size of a regular bus and then smaller bus, just in case we have different size students.
I reached out to the bus company because I do not have the cost for a smaller bus. I don't have an exact cost at this point in time for that. I have a meeting set up with them for a week from Friday. A lot of it's going to depend on what we're going to do with that bus. Our current buses are priced based on 2 runs per day, because all of our buses do that. So I think there's going to have to be some decisions made by the board first before we can get an exact price, but they can probably give me a ballpark at that time. But a full bus right now is $47,406.60 for next year. And we can probably put between 56 and 60 high school students on that size bus comfortably.
Sorry, 47,000, and what was the change?
406.60.
Thank you.
And part of the reason that the cost for a smaller bus isn't going to be significantly lower is they still have to pay the driver, they still have to pay for insurance, they still have to pay for the lease or the purchase of the bus. So a lot of the costs are the same, whether it's a big bus or a small bus.
Karen, can I ask you quickly, on the, because I know like the kids say currently they go to Central, I think it was like $50. I don't know if they charge the kids a certain amount. I mean, it's really a token amount now. It
Right.
seems like when you say 47 grand, $50, it's a drop in the bucket.
Right.
So, it's whatever, all right, so it's $50.
It's $50 per semester. So and so if you only ride for half the year, you only pay the $50.
Okay.
So they pay a total of $100 for the year.
For the full year, yes.
I just have a question.
Can I just get that cost? You reported that the cost for the bus was $47,000, is that what you said?
$47,406.60
Per bus.
Correct.
And that's for a large bus, but the cost of a smaller bus was not significantly.
You didn't have the exact number, but I'm saying it wouldn't be half the cost. It will be somewhere in between. And again, I have a meeting set up for a week from Friday, but a lot of it's going to depend on the usage of those buses. So
I just have a question. Do we subsidize any students like that can't afford the bus pass?
yes,
Do we,
yes.
do we have a rough estimate how many that is?
No, the bus passes are sold here at Holly. So I do not know. I think the number's pretty low. I could find out for you for next week if you'd like.
If you could, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Madam Chair? Dr. Littlefield, perhaps your work, Karen, could describe a little bit to us the impact that you experienced in Auburn when you were in transition, assuming the fact that Pinkerton contract passed. I believe Auburn didn't just cut off service to Manchester. Didn't they provide a dual bus for a period of time? I'm just trying to get an idea of what we might experience here.
Yes and no, and Karen, you're going to have to help me out a little bit. The board did not provide transportation to Pinkerton.
That was the original, yes.
Because this September was when the contract became official. But we add or reroute?
We actually picked up the Pinkerton and Manchester students at the same time with the 3 buses that were utilized for high school. And then those buses met up, and one bus brought kids to Pinkerton. Nope, I'm sorry. 2 buses went to Pinkerton, 1 bus went to Manchester. The biggest logistical problem with that is Pinkerton starts a half an hour earlier than Manchester. So our Manchester kids from Auburn were getting picked up a half an hour earlier than they needed to be picked up.
And didn't that affect collaterally some of the elementary runs?
Yes, yes, because the Manchester bus was a little bit later getting back, and so we had to combine two elementary runs.
Did we add buses, Karen?
We added buses this year, but not last year.
And how many did we add this year?
This year, we added 3 buses to the budget. We are only using 2 buses.
So now they're doing separate runs with
Yes.
the new buses?
Yes,
So, and so probably around 47,000 each is what,
they're a little bit under because this is, the 47,000 is next year's cost.
okay,
So this year it's 46,000 and some change.
okay.
And again, the reason we didn't add last year was it was the board's intent not to provide transportation to Pinkerton last year up until the last minute. And then a lot of kids ended up going to Pinkerton, and the board decided they would provide that transportation.
Okay, because I'm just trying to get some rough numbers on what's going to happen if we pass a Pinkerton contract and we decide to send a bus and we continue a bus at Manchester. I think at some point we're going to need to run that scenario so that we can kind of see what kind of impact that's going to be. We may well be a little premature right now because we don't know, but I think maybe in the next couple of weeks we should think about that as a board, that we can figure out what kind of impact that would be.
Also, go ahead.
No, I was also going to ask, has the board addressed, talked about, or made a decision about the satellite schools too? Or is it just Manchester and potentially Pinkerton that we'll be talking about?
At this point, I think we're talking about Manchester.
Yeah, I think we haven't talked about it, but I think we should talk about the whole package and see what we're gonna, I mean, I think we can make a decision on what we wanna do.
Because if I could, we're into budget time right now. And so if it were going to be Manchester and Pinkerton, I really would make some assumptions about numbers, but I actually want Karen to start working out a transportation plan, a very initial one, so that we'd know whether we have any budgetary impact on transportation, or whether we can do it with existing runs. I don't know.
Dave, go ahead, you go first. Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we have the administration go ahead and make a plan for transporting students to both Manchester High School and Pinkerton High School for starting in September of 2014.
Do we have a second?
Second. Speak to the motion based on the budget impact, and I don't want to give the impression to the public that we are anticipating that a Pinkerton contract will fail or pass, but we need to make plans, and we're not also anticipating that we are going to provide transportation to Pinkerton. The board hasn't made that decision, but I think in lieu of getting those numbers together in time, we need to start looking at it right now.
I don't know if this question is specifically to the motion, but one of the things that I've heard a great deal in the community when they discuss the option of Pinkerton is an activities bus. And it's my understanding, and I've tried to do some research, though I'm not finding anything, is that Hampstead does do an activity bus to Pinkerton that picks up later, and the cost is divided among the people who use it. And I don't know if that's something that the board would like to look at, or if we could maybe get numbers from them on what does that bus look like, to see if that's a viable option. It might not be one next year because it's only freshmen, but that might help parents who are looking at Pinkerton down the road and having an activity. Because when they have an objection, one of the objection is, well, the after-school activities, and I work in Manchester, and a couple of people have brought up, well, I know that Hampstead does an activity bus, and I've tried to go and research in Hampstead, but I can't find costs of what it is and how the parents absorb that cost.
Well, I think it's an interesting idea. I'm not quite sure it fits in the motion, but let's have a little leeway if it's good discussion. One of the things I think we need to not discount that it's just freshmen, because I think statistics show it's mostly freshmen and sophomore that ride the buses.
Oh, okay.
So, you know what I mean?
But I mean, if you were trying to avoid all the financial impact in one year, and a freshman's family knew the activity bus is something we're pursuing for the second year, that might,
Right,
help
I
with that.
think the other consideration is back to your committee of trying to promote the warrant article. If a lot of increased costs come with this, that could hurt the viability of the warrant article. So although I think the activity bus is a great idea, I think it would probably be better something considered in the second year. I just threw the freshman thing in there because as we started talking about transportation, I was surprised to find out how it diminishes as the kids get older.
We
I
could
knew
al-
it did, but I didn't know exactly.
we could also speak to the bus company, because I believe it's the same bus company that has assisted Londonderry in providing the bus that comes here in the afternoon and in the morning to bring kids to Londonderry, and maybe there can be a shared cost. I mean, because that's not a cost that Londonderry is absorbing. The families have contributed into that we could look at that as well. And if you'd like, I can get,
I have information about that. They're actually paying $124 a month for that service, the families are.
yep,
So they're absorbing the entire cost of that bus. Londonderry is not paying for any part of that. The bus company can work with us to coordinate that, because it is the same bus company. It's the same person that I'm going to be meeting with next week. So we can certainly, work with them and see what we can do about that.
I think one of the problems we face on an activities bus is seasonal sports. You know, at least I'm assuming if some kids are signing up for the Londonderry transportation, they're funding for the whole year, it probably gives them a lot more consistency. So, all things that we could talk about.
Right, in a seasonal, a late bus wouldn't cost you what the bus to Londonderry is costing, because we would use one of our current buses. We should do that when, or actually Dunbarton does that for their kids that go to school in Goffstown. They have a late bus that goes down to both the middle school and high school, picks the kids up and brings them up to Dunbarton. So you wouldn't pay, what we would have to pay for is the driver and the mileage on the bus, potentially some fuel. But it wouldn't be a huge increase because we'd just use one of our buses that we have.
Did they do a central drop-off when they get back to Dunbarton?
Yes, they do.
So they don't
They'll
have
drop
to-
some kids off on the way to, different streets, not at houses, and then they go to the elementary school and drop the rest of the kids off there.
Michelle.
In light of what Karen had just said, I think it should be part of the plan. We should know what that might cost for parents if they wanted to. I think that should be incorporated.
Could you reread the motion that we have on the floor regarding transportation?
Motion to have the administration make a plan to transport students to Manchester and Pinkerton starting in 2014.
Is there any more discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion. Anyone opposed? I think I heard 5 ayes. It carries 5-0.
Just for clarification,
Yeah.
Trish, are you looking for us to provide you with different scenarios
Yes, please.
to look at? Okay.
Is everyone in agreement with that? Yes.
Well, and my thought would be to provide the same level of service we are to Manchester students to Pinkerton. So, in other words, the same.
So the same level of service
Pickups,
to
yeah.
both Manchester and Pinkerton?
Yeah, that was
That's
my
going to be
idea.
6 buses.
That was my idea.
Yeah, that will be 6 additional buses that you will need to do that.
But can you do different scenarios where, how you explained what happened in Auburn, was sometimes they bussed kids and had a hub and went to see if that would work, or?
We could do that, we would be picking up your Manchester kids a half an hour earlier. If that's what you're looking to do, then we
Could we do both
it.
scenarios just to see?
Because, the Manchester kids, did they get dropped off first or last? They probably get dropped off last and have to cruise the bus for that whole time that it's gone, you know what I mean? Or no?
They they'll just get picked up in the morning. During the route, we would pick up the Manchester and Pinkerton kids all together,
Yeah.
and then the Pinkerton kids would go on some of the buses. Manchester kids would probably have to sit somewhere for a while on a bus.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we can't drop them off before a certain time in Manchester.
No, and how, just because I don't know, I don't remember that far back, how much before school starts can kids be dropped off at a Manchester high school? Because like at Colley, school doesn't start until 7:40, but you can start dropping off at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't think it's 40 minutes in Manchester. I would say it's probably 10 or 15.
Yeah, if it's anything like the back end, I know when my daughter went to Central, they don't allow them to hang out. They pretty much, unless you go do a sport or something, there's no place for kids to stick around. They have to be out of there.
And with that scenario, they meet up in like a parking lot and exchange kids from bus to bus? Is that?
Yes.
And then the 2 buses go, the 3 buses, whatever, go their own way?
Right. They'd meet at a central location and move kids around, yes.
So I think it is important that we work out both scenarios, because one of the issues really has been with Pinkerton is the time on the bus. And so far, we have just been trying to say, well, here's what it would be if we had 6 extra buses, because you're just going to pick up Pinkerton and drive right to Pinkerton. So this impacts Pinkerton to a small degree, to stop in the parking lot and exchange kids. I don't know how long that's going to take. But Manchester to a larger degree.
And do we currently do that for, between the buses that go to Central and West? Like, is there a transfer between buses at any point?
I think there might be a transfer at Kmart in the morning for some of those buses. I know there was at one time. I'm not sure if they're still doing that or if that bus is dropping at one high school and then going to another.
Did you ask that question?
I have the routes with me.
I can't follow a bus route to save myself, so.
So in rough numbers, Karen, even if we said 45,000 for bus plus 6, I won't hold you to that, but rough numbers if we just duplicated the run and didn't have them picked up together.
Another option you could do is central pickups for both Pinkerton and high school. Some strategically located pickups that the buses could do. And then you could conceivably only use 3 of your buses for Manchester and 3 for Pinkerton if the numbers worked out. But then you wouldn't be providing the same level of service, so that would just be an option.
I think we're really going to have to look at all the options, because in my rough numbers, it's at least 250,000 if we just did the deluxe plan and just added the buses. So I think it's going to be a really important consideration for parents.
Do you have any other questions for us, Karen?
No, and I just looked at the route and it does go to West and then Central, so we don't.
We don't transfer kids.
Right.
So I just have a kind of a general question for the board. We're talking about our overall plan here. You know, we're talking about an anchor school, and then we're talking about the satellite schools. If the contract's approved and Pinkerton becomes the anchor school, Manchester then becomes the satellite school, is that correct? No. So what is Manchester considered at that time? Do we have 2 anchor schools?
Anchor school is a term that we made up. So we're defined, I think, a satellite school as an option to the primary, the anchor school. So in that sense, Manchester would be, except we will maintain a tuition agreement with Manchester through 2018. So it's a little bit different. The settlement agreement is in fact a tuition agreement. So it's a little bit different than the other 3. It will be considered to be a school maintained by the district.
So I'm just wondering, just as far as a policy, we should just be talking about, you know, providing transportation to schools that we have tuition agreements with. So that, you know, if we have these just assume we have these memorandums of understanding. They are not tuition agreements. That's more of a policy type thing, because people are going to ask, about transportation. So if our policy was the schools that we have a tuition agreement with, we provide transportation.
At this point, I think we're not at the point of setting policy on which students we're busing. We're just asking for numbers on what is busing to our anchor school and Manchester. At this point, that's what we're asking them to get for us.
Right, and so I'm trying to clarify though, because we're talking about Manchester, but all along we've been talking about this whole concept of an anchor school. So I was just trying to get straight in my mind when I explain it to parents moving forward, how that all works as far as the board's policy on providing transportation for Hooksett children.
I don't think we're at a policy decision yet. I think we're at, can we have numbers on what it looks like to transport to the two? That's my interpretation. Someone else might have a different one. But I think at this point, we're just asking for what the costs are and what it would look like. Are we adding 6 buses or are we adding 3 buses? Are we reallocating what we have?
And I would just like to be clear with the public too, we have to do some planning. We did not make any decisions about any contracts or anything when we were in this room. So it's not inevitable that anything's going to happen, but we have to make these plans in case something happens.
Could we have the motion reread to us, please?
Motion to have the administration, motion to have the administration make the plan for schools. Want to do that? Motion, I guess?
No, we're just talking. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure. Does anyone have any more things they'd like the administration to look at on transportation? Any questions?
I don't think we have any update on the GIS thing, do we, Dr. Littlefield? I didn't hear anything about that.
I did, I got one, I haven't had a chance to read the email though, because I've been here. But I did run into Becky, and I think that the routing module is in place. And that's, I ran into her in the hall when I was coming in here, and she said, I send you an update. The routing software is in place. I just found out at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay, so we could have that possibly for our
For the
meeting.
15th, yeah, I'll have her update you.
Just so.
What I was going to say is that is kind of tied into obviously the criteria for the placement of students, which obviously next on the agenda is kind of doubled up on here, but I was also going to recommend, I don't know if the appropriate term to table it, because a lot of the conversation we had in non-public was the fact that we were going to get some input from the attorney on some of those criteria or a plan for criteria. So I don't know if we move that or table it.
That's the next thing. Process is next.
Right, I know, it was listed on both those, listed on the items that we had to address every week, so I didn't mean to jump the agenda. Communication.
Are we all set with transportation that we'll have at our next meeting, an update on GIS and Karen presenting us scenarios?
You want that plan for next week's meeting?
Or if that's too short, we could, I'm sorry.
Sorry, but
could-
we're kind of tied up during the day with budget.
Okay, so would it be realistic for the November 5th meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
absolutely. Sorry about that. So now on our high school